So let me begin this video by just saying, I'm not saying you have to like, dislike, love, or hate the Acolyte. You're allowed to think whatever you want about the show. I'm only here to debunk the "it breaks canon" arguments, and a few "why did a character do this" questions that sometimes I think the show explains well, while other times I don't think the show explains very well at all. With that being said, let's just dive into this. Number 1. Osha and Mae's creation breaks canon because Anakin Skywalker is the first person to ever been created by the Force. This is never stated anywhere. No reference book, no movie, no show, no book or comic or game says this. I've seen some people say that the Darth Plagueis novel says this, but 1, I don't think it does, and 2, even if it did, it's not canon to the current canon. It's only canon to Legends. So Mae and Osha's creation wouldn't be breaking that. Not only this, but Osha and Mae's births were very different from Anakin's. Anakin was created by the Force itself as a response to Palpatine and Plagueis doing some spooky dark side stuff, while Mae and Osha are kind of the same person. The witch cult in the series split a soul in half, which resulted in the two. The witches essentially manipulated the Force into creating life, while Anakin was created by the Force itself. You can argue that this makes Anakin's birth less special, and that's fine. I personally disagree, but that's your opinion. I'm not here to debate that. Number 2. That's not how kyber crystal bleeding works. For those that don't know, kyber crystal bleeding is the canon explanation for red lightsabers, even though it was created by George Lucas well before the Disney buyout, during the production of Season 5 of The Clone Wars. It's been shown in great detail 4 times. The first was in issue 5 of the Darth Vader comic released in September of 2017, in which Vader is shown creating his lightsaber after a brutal fight with a Jedi named Ki-Adi-Mundi. The second time it was shown was in issue 4 of the Rise of Kylo Ren comic series, released in March of 2020. In the Darth Vader comic, the act of bleeding a crystal is shown to be extremely difficult, and is performed as part of a ceremony. This is obviously not shown in the Acolyte finale, in which Osha is shown unknowingly bleeding her crystal in a rather quick amount of time. So how come Vader, one of the most powerful Sith Lords in history, took longer to bleed a crystal than Osha, a woman who had cut off the Force for a number of years? There's no official explanation, but using clues in both stories, we can get an idea. For starters, let's look at the lightsaber crystals they bled, and their relationships to these crystal owners. The crystal that Vader bled was owned by Ki-Adi-Mundi. I think I pronounced his name differently this time, but oh well. An insanely powerful Jedi known for his combat skills. He was so powerful that he nearly killed Vader during their duel. But before this incident, Vader had never heard of this guy. He had no connection to him. So Vader fought and killed him, and when he tried to bleed the crystal actually fought back. It can be speculated that it fought back because of Infela's power, or maybe it fought back because of who Vader is. Kyber crystals, by default, are filled with light side energy, and aren't exactly fans of being bled by darksiders. So if the number 2 Sith Lord in history were to try and bleed a crystal, I wouldn't be shocked if that crystal fought back just a little bit harder. The crystal that Osha bled belonged to her former Jedi Master, Sol, somebody that she looked up to as a parent of sorts, someone she trusted with her life. And she bleeds the crystal right after finding out that Sol lied to her about almost everything that happened to her as a child, and that Sol was responsible for killing her very own mother. Feeling betrayed on an unbelievable scale, she murdered Sol, and then, while holding his lightsaber, which had an exposed crystal due to his recent duel with the stranger, her hatred and anger for Sol accidentally bled the crystal. While Sol was a powerful Jedi, he wasn't on the same scale as Infella, and actually already had some darkness in him, as he had covered up a murder for years. Because of her connection to Sol, and it being his crystal, it's very possible this connection is what allowed her to bleed the crystal easier than Vader. This is actually backed up by the Rise of Kylo Ren comic series, as Kylo Ren, or Ben Solo, is shown bleeding his very own kyber crystal, and because of his connection to the crystal and his hatred and uncertainty towards himself, he was able to bleed it far easier than his grandfather. He did crack it though, which sucks, but he was able to get a cool-ass lightsaber out of it, so it wasn't all that bad. This is again backed up in the video game Jedi Survivor, in which the fallen Jedi, Dagan Gera, is shown bleeding his crystal extremely quickly because, well, it was his crystal. And he was also pretty powerful in the Force. I mean, the dude made a Force arm, for God's sakes. So it seems pretty obvious, at least to me, that kyber crystal bleeding can be made easier if you have a connection to the crystal. And because crystal bleeding is still a relatively new thing in Star Wars, only being seen a handful of times, I don't see how what Osha does breaks canon. It's simply a new lore tidbit about the process. Number 3. How can there be fire in space? There's two lines of thinking with this one. The first is, how can there be fire in space when there's no oxygen? Well, according to George Lucas, fire can be in space whenever he wants it to be. No joke, this is a real quote from George Lucas. Fire has been shown in space in Star Wars in A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, The Rise of Skywalker, Rogue One, Solo, Andor, The Mandalorian, Jedi Fallen Order, Outlaws, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, Battlefront 2, The Clone Wars, Rebels, Resistance, and a whole bunch of comics. Some have argued that these fires were more just like explosions, and that they were caused by fuel, which is true for a lot of them, but, like, that's still fire in space. That's impossible, and the fire shown in space in the Acolyte was part of a spaceship, so it should be fuel-based as well. The second line of thinking is that this fire is very campfire-like, but it shouldn't look like that. And, like, I guess I agree with that, but, like, I don't really think it's a big deal. It was like an aesthetic thing for the show. It doesn't break canon. Number 4. Why does Torbin lose control on Brendok? This isn't a canon-breaking argument, but instead a storytelling argument. A lot of people feel that Torbin's insistence on leaving Brendok and his actions that led to the deaths of the witches was rather unrealistic. But I honestly don't understand this line of thinking. Torbin grew up on Coruscant, sheltered as a Padawan, and he didn't have any real combat experience prior. He was a young Padawan, a teenager, who was away from home for the first time for a very long amount of time. Then, upon hearing about witches, his mind jumps to Night Sisters, terrifying witches that he's only heard stories about. He then gets his mind messed with by the leader of the Witch Coven, which then leaves him in a traumatized-like state. And upon learning that Mae and Osha are a virgins in the Force, and that if they brought them with them, they'd be able to leave the planet, he races over to get them. It's simple. He was a scared teenager. Obviously, I'm not excusing his actions, but I don't really see how they were unrealistic. He was a scared teen. Number 5. Why did Bazil stop Sol from killing Mae? I'll admit, this one's weird. They really should have had a scene explaining this, or at the very least, a line acknowledging it. Bazil preventing Sol from killing Mae is rather out of nowhere, but we can figure out at least 2 reasons as to why. The first is that Pip is on board the ship with Mae, and Bazil has been shown to be quite fond of the little droid, so if Sol blew up Mae's ship, Pip would be destroyed. The second reason, and the reason that I personally believe, is that Bazil saw that Sol was about to kill an opponent who was running away, something that the Jedi Order is not exactly very fond of. So Bazil preventing Sol from killing Mae may have been his way of keeping his friend from breaking the Jedi Code. Number 6. Why was Sol so insistent on recruiting Mae and Osha? I'll admit, Sol stalking the two girls on Brendok looks a little bit suspicious. But it's pretty clear why Sol feels a connection with the twins, or more so Osha, and that is, he doesn't. I mean, he eventually forms a connection with Osha, but at the time, he was just saying that. Whether or not he actually believed they had a connection is left in the air. Notice how in the second flashback episode, it's revealed that Sol wants to have a Padawan, but his fellow Jedi Masters aren't super sure about him, with Master Indara saying that Sol often confuses others' feelings with his own. He was also extremely certain that a vergence in the Force was responsible for the life on Brendok, a planet that was believed to be uninhabitable. They spent quite a long time on Brendok, and they all wanted to go home. So it's not that crazy that Sol either made himself believe that he had a connection to the girls, or lied about the connection in order to get a Padawan and prove that he's worthy of having one, but also that this mission wasn't a waste of time, and that he was right. There was a vergence in the Force on the planet. Number 7. Mae couldn't have set the Coven's base on fire because it was built of stone. This is a weird argument in my opinion, because it implies that buildings not made of wood can't be burned down. Mae is shown to have started the fire with a lantern, a Star Wars lantern, so we don't know the exact fuel being used to, fuel the thing, but it can be assumed that it's a highly flammable fuel. So when she broke the lantern, the fuel may have leaked out until it either hit another lantern or hit some mining tech. A lot of people tend to forget this, but the Witch's Coven is built from a former mining facility, so it's not that far of a stretch to assume that there's still some explosive material still lying around the place, or that the stuff that they were mining was explosive. Number 8. Why does Mae switch allegiances so quickly? The final argument that I want to go over is with Mae's allegiances. So let's go over her story real quick. Mae witnesses her mother being killed by Sol, and the rest of the Coven being killed by the other Jedi. She also believes that Sol killed her sister. She then comes into contact with the Stranger, who teaches her in the ways of the dark side, so that she can get revenge on the people who killed her family. Years go by, and she finds out that Osha is still alive, and that she still has family. Not wanting to fight a Wookiee without a weapon, and knowing that she still has family, she betrays the Stranger and decides to turn herself in. But the Stranger then kills Kelnaka, framing her for his death, and then tries to kill her, all while Jeki attacks Mae and tries to arrest her, refusing to hear her out. Mae doesn't even really bother trying to explain herself, because, she did kill 2 Jedi, and she doesn't trust that Jeki and the other Jedi will be able to kill the Stranger, so if she's arrested, the Stranger will easily be able to kill her. Upon reuniting with Osha, Mae discovers that Osha joined the Jedi for a period of time, and still has a connection to them. Wanting to free her sister from the people that she blames for the rest of their family's deaths, she swaps places with Osha and tries to kill Osha's last connection to the Jedi, who is, coincidentally, the man who killed her mother. It's very clear to me that Mae's allegiances were never with the Sith. They were always with her family, and she was willing to do anything to protect her family. This is even further shown as she literally allows her mind to be wiped so that she didn't have to die and hurt Osha. Number 9. Osha should have died in the crash. Okay, I know I said the last one was the final argument, but I just remembered some more, so here we go. In the first episode of the show, Osha survives a very serious spaceship crash. Many people have said that her surviving was extremely unrealistic and didn't make any sense. Like, you're not gonna like my response, but Star Wars does this all the time. Characters surviving crazy situations happens all the time, whether they be spaceship crashes, both big and small, but also being cut in half, being burnt alive, being eaten alive, being out in the vacuum of space for a few seconds, and falling from extreme heights. If you think her surviving the crash is weird, then, I mean, there's nothing I can really say. Like, that's just an element of Star Wars that you don't like, which, I mean, fair enough, that's your opinion. Number 10. Ki-Adi-Mundi shouldn't be alive. In episode 4 of The Acolyte, Ki-Adi-Mundi shows up briefly, and this little cameo made a lot of people mad, because Mundi's species, a Saurian, isn't supposed to be able to live for centuries. This is confirmed in the book Ultimate Alien Anthology, a source book to a Star Wars pen and paper RPG from 2003. A source that hasn't been canon in over a decade. Yes, this is technically a retcon in the wider franchise, but in canon, there wasn't anything saying that they couldn't. I mean, they're a species with a very low birth rate, so I don't think it's that crazy of an idea that they can live for quite a while. But there's another issue here, and that's Ki-Adi-Mundi's birthday. In Legends, Ki-Adi-Mundi was stated to be born in 93 BBY, and since The Acolyte takes place in 132 BBY, his appearance shouldn't be possible, and this is true. In Legends. Again, the only source talking about Mundi's birthday was in Legends, and honestly, the source behind this statement was already barely canon to Legends. His birth year was stated in the, well, not game, but a computer program called Star Wars Episode 1 Insider's Guide, a promotional CD-ROM letting people watch trailers for the film and look at lore bits from the film. This obscure virtual reference book is the only time Mundi's birth year was ever mentioned, so him having a new one in canon, I personally don't think is a big deal. I mean, I guess you can think it's a big deal, I'm not gonna take that from you, obviously, but since all this stuff is not canon to canon, The Acolyte didn't actually break canon. Number 11. How did the Jedi mistake Osha for Mae? This is pretty explicitly stated in the show, but I've seen a lot of people argue this. Mae's existence was wiped from all records, so the fact that Osha has an identical twin, one born from the very same soul, is not common knowledge. So when the Jedi find someone who matches the exact description of Mae, it's no wonder they think Osha might be responsible. But you're now probably wondering, well, what about Sol later in the series? How was he tricked by Mae? And the answer to that is, I don't think he was. I think he was trying to buy some time, and was pretending to think that Mae was Osha to catch Mae off guard, and also to explain to her his side of the story. Him saying that he's gonna tell the Jedi Council about what really happened on Brendok to Mae, I personally read as him trying to calm her and convince her not to do whatever she's planning. But I can see an argument for Sol actually being tricked by her, and that's only because Osha and Mae were born from the very same soul. So, like, maybe they have, like, similar feelings, energy, you know, force stuff, but I personally don't think he was tricked. Number 12. They shouldn't have shown Plagueis and Yoda if they knew they weren't getting a second season. The show was planned to go on for at least 2 seasons, so ending the show with some cameos teasing the next season makes sense. I mean, other shows and movies have done this, like The Walking Dead, The Avengers, hell, a lot of Marvel projects, The Boys, and even Star Wars. Did y'all forget about Moff Gideon pulling out the Darksaber at the end of The Mandalorian Season 1? If the show was cancelled after Season 1, then people would be really annoyed, which is why a lot of people were annoyed when The Acolyte Season 2 was cancelled. The Acolyte didn't come up with the idea of introducing new characters or lore bits in a season finale to tease audiences for the next season. Does it suck when a show is cancelled and these teases aren't followed up on? Yeah, absolutely, but I don't think that's a problem with the show. Instead, I think that's a problem with the people who actually decide whether or not a show gets a second season. That being the people who finance the show, so Disney. Again, I need to clarify. It's fine to hate the show. It's fine to love the show. It's fine to dislike it, or not even have an opinion on it. This video was just made to debunk some arguments about the show breaking canon. I myself don't even love the show. I mean, I like it, but I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. It had some pretty high highs, but some pretty low lows. I personally wasn't that big on the witch stuff, and the power of many chant was very cringy. So, yeah, that's this quick video. Hope you all have a good one. Stay safe and all that, and I'll see you guys next time. But before I go, huge shout out to my channel members. Your support means literally everything to me and more, so thank you. Thank you to Nathan Trench, Steven, Maurice Deceased, Paste, Digital Medic, Adam Depp, and Ismail IXQ8.